This is the fourth video on face drawing, and this video will focus on the drawing of a nose. So as usual, before we proceed to actually draw anything, I'm going to check the math. So the nose should be, once again, halfway between the middle of the eyes and the chin. Yep. And the width of it, the nose should align to the inside of the eye. So I'm just checking, yup. And the other thing I'm going to check is just to make sure that it's centered so that I have this side, same, yep. Okay, so now that I've checked the math, the next thing I'm going to do is erase my blocking lines so that they're unbelievably light. Hopefully you're just drawing yours really light to begin with. Okay, so in order to do the nose, I'm just going to zoom up here. Okay, so what we're going to do, just get a scrap piece of paper first, is you've got this as your blocking lines. And what we need to do is we need to do the tip of the nose. And usually that's easiest to do as a kind of a flat little U shape. And then we need to go up and over for the nostrils. But this measurement here, that's for the outside of the nostril, not the inside. So you need to be able to come back in and leave enough space here so that when we put the outer nostril on, we have the room there to represent the thickness of the skin. So when it comes to this shape, I said this is a flat U. That'll vary from person to person, but that's usually the generic shape. What does change from person to person, though, is the shape of the nostrils. So as you start looking, you'll see some people have vertical nostrils that are really super skinny like this, or they might have them like this. And then some people, they lean a little bit that way, go this way. We can get things that look like this. And then other people, their nostrils are horizontal. So the shape of nostrils completely changes from person to person. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead on my good copy and starting in the middle, very lightly, give kind of this flat little U shape. And I'm just going to pick a shape for a nostril. Try to do the same on the other side. Again, not going quite out to the outside. And I can already tell that mine aren't exactly the same. But remember, the way to always check when you want to check to make sure your stuff is correct is to turn the page upside down, and then it becomes a lot more obvious. And I will go ahead and fix everything while it's upside down. And that looks a bit better now. Okay, so then the top of the nostril, people, that's another mistake. Everyone always does this. They make these short, tiny little nostrils. That's not where they go. So if we were to do the math and you start looking at faces, they are at least a quarter of the way between the bottom of the nose and the eyes, and can be up to a third. So let's do our easy math. So from the bottom of the nose to the middle of the eye, if I fold my paper once, that'll give me the halfway. And if I fold my paper again, that'll give me a quarter. That's the absolute minimum that the outside of the nostrils can go to. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go back to my measurement. I'm just going to go slightly out and then up. I'm just going to put mine a little bit past that point, and I'm going to do the same on this side. So noses are all about shading, because you're probably looking at this going, that does not look very good, and it doesn't. All right, So at this point, I'm going to go ahead, make sure all the last of my blocking lines are gone. I'm going to lighten all my lines because I don't want any outlines. When you're creating realistic images, you never want outlines. Okay, and let the shading begin. So first of all, we're going to do the nostrils. And if I draw on a scrap piece of paper a side view of a nose, we've got this happening. And the nostril is kind of like a cave. And it's one of the darkest places on your face. But if you think about it, up here at the back is going to be really dark because no sunshine's getting in there. And it's going to start to get lighter as it comes down. So how to do that is, once again, I'm just going to use a smudgy. And I'm going to start at the top. And I'm going to shade just a little bit up here. So again, you can just do it with a smudgy or start it with a pencil. And then I'm going to start to blend it so that it slowly transitions from dark to light. I said the trick is you can't just suddenly stop a nostril like this. It doesn't work. Right? Once we do all the shading of the skin, it'll blend in completely to that. And again, slowly build up your shading. It's easier to go back and darken things, not as easy to go back and lighten. And then don't worry about the underside too much because later we'll be shading all that skin. Okay, so the next thing we have to do, I'm just going to go back to this little diagram, is the end of the nose is a sphere. And you know what to do with spheres. They must be darker down here and get lighter as they go up. So I'm going to turn my page. I'm left-handed, so I'm turning mine this way. And again, I'm just going to add a little bit of shading to the bottom. And of course, we always shade in the direction. So as I'm starting to round it and curve it, I'm not going straight across, I'm curving. And I'm slowly coming up this way to try to start to create that illusion that the end of the nose is round. So we also need to get rid of the line that we have right now for the outside of the nostril. And usually just by kind of going in and softening this line, it'll start to create the look that it's just a valley. And I'm just, as I start to slowly again go from dark a little bit to light this way, it'll start to bend the outside of the nose. Okay, so one thing never to do is don't take a shadow all the way on this side and on this side. It looks horrible if you do a shadow solid from here to here and from here to here. What you can do is, so I'm just going to start to drag down this shadow to start to give the nose some definition. And always going a little bit darker and blending out a little bit more. You can also do this part with a Kleenex to avoid getting these lines. And you're going to do the same thing if you haven't already done so on this side. But I usually leave this area alone. So I'll bring this shading down, I'll have this shading come up, and then I just kind of leave this area just so it's not solid. You can take one side and bring it all the way down to show one side of the nose, but I'm going to go ahead and do mine from it. The minute I do this, I just flattened everything. I just made it cartoony again. So it's just a little trick I've learned, is to just go a little bit lighter on one side and you can go a bit darker on the other. So I will go ahead and add a little bit of shading over here. And what you're doing is you're now defining the nose and you're causing it to rise above the face. It's the lightest, it's going to be the lightest thing on the face, right? And we need to have little bits of shadows over here on the side to represent that this part is sticking up. So the other thing we need to do is we just need to add a bit more definition here to the bottom. And individual people, some people will have a shadow right here. If their nose is kind of really round on the end, there'll be a little of a shadow. But we definitely need shadows here and here. So if I go back to my diagram, there was the side view. Well, what if I drew it from the bottom? So I would have, there's the nostril, the main nose, and here's the here's your nostrils like this, right? So what happens is this area right here needs some definition. We have to show that there's a separation between this part of the nose and the nostril. And right now, we don't have that. So if you take this round part here, you were to kind of continue it up, it would go right there and right about there. That's where you need to have a little bit of a shadow. And that will separate the large nose area from the nostrils on the side. So said, anytime there's a dent, you have to have a shadow. Anytime something sticks up, that's your lighter part. And things like the nostrils, I mean, I will go back later and darken it a little bit more. It's getting a little too smudgy looking down there. I like to smudge stuff to make nice soft skin tones, but at some point you kind of got to go back and just add a bit of definition to it.